Carl William Copperman, a 47-year-old man whose life was marked by a diverse array of jobs. He studied accounting at Long Beach State University and went on to work as an internal auditor for the Los Angeles County Municipal Court, as well as serving as the chief accountant for Princess Cruises in Santa Clarita, California. Over the years, he gained experience as a senior financial analyst for the Walt Disney Company in Burbank, California, until 2009, when he received distressing news. His mother's health was declining, requiring constant care and medication management. Feeling a deep sense of responsibility, Carl decided to leave his job and move in with his mother in California. He packed his bags and devoted himself to her care, spending every day by her side. His social interactions became limited to her circle doctors, nurses, neighbors, and family members. During rare moments of solitude, he would reach out to friends via phone or the internet, chatting on platforms like Facebook or WhatsApp. Occasionally, he sought out online forums for reviews, debates, and opinions. In August 2009, he stumbled upon news surrounding the Jaycee Dugard case, a story that profoundly affected him. Intrigued, he immediately opened his laptop to search for more information, eager to view photos, read opinions, and understand public sentiment. It was during this exploration that he first encountered an amateur criminal investigation forum called Web Sleuths. Carl felt an immediate surge of curiosity upon joining the forum. Dozens of individuals were actively sharing a wealth of information, not only about the Jaycee Dugard case but also regarding numerous other missing persons, kidnapping incidents, and unidentified bodies. Participants from around the globe transcribed articles, posted mugshots, and shared search flyers, creating an impressive archive. Carl devoted up to 12 hours each day to reading the forum discussions. He created an account, began commenting on his hypotheses and ideas, and soon became an enthusiastic investigator. He meticulously searched for photos of crime victims, shared them, and then sought the same images in online albums, particularly on classmates.com. His collection grew so vast that he had to create an Excel spreadsheet, compiling a list of approximately 19,000 names, which he shared with fellow forum members. As more contributors added names and information, Carl's dedication led him to become an administrator of Web Sleuths. His research efforts were commendable, and he soon recognized that he could offer even more assistance. Noticing that the police's facial reconstructions lacked realism, often appearing stiff and lifeless, Carl decided to take matters into his own hands. He began creating his own reconstructions and sent them to law enforcement agencies, contributing to the resolution of several cases. One particular case captured his attention. On July 21st of that year, a father and daughter discovered a lifeless body in a cornfield in Wisconsin during what was supposed to be a peaceful family outing with the Epice. The sight they encountered was chilling. A young woman, estimated to be between 18 and 35 years old, was found with extensive bruises, broken bones, and a disfigured face. Tragically, it became evident that she had been raped prior to her death. In 2009, her identity remained a mystery, and despite the police's efforts, including a facial reconstruction and distribution of her image, no one could identify her. Carl reviewed the case details and examined the victim's photo, matching the age criteria with the names in his extensive database of 19,000 entries. To his surprise, he found a case that coincidentally aligned with this one. This case involved a 15-year-old girl named Aundria Bowman, who ran away from home in 1989. In 1999, she would have been 25 years old, and her physical appearance closely resembled that of the unidentified Jane Doe. Carl contacted the police to share his findings, and they promptly reached out to the Bowman family. Brenda and Dennis Bowman, the girl's adoptive parents, were hopeful that they had found their daughter. However, to confirm this, a DNA sample was required, which neither Brenda nor Dennis could provide, since they were not her biological parents. Aundria had been adopted at 10 months old through an adoption agency in Norfolk, Virginia. The police then contacted Aundria's biological mother, Sita Kainan, requesting that she submit a DNA sample. At this point in the narrative, we must take a step back in time to June 23, 1974, in New Orleans, where a 16-year-old girl named Kathy Turkin gave birth to her first and only child, a healthy baby girl she named Alexis Miranda. Kathy came from a family plagued by structural issues and had run away from home at 14, attempting to escape several more times. Unfortunately, as a minor, she had nowhere to go. Kathy felt immense pressure. Her family constantly reminded her that she was too young, irresponsible, and incapable of caring for a baby. Despite these discouraging messages, Kathy was determined to fight for her child. She resolved to study and work hard, hoping to create a better life for herself and Alexis. Sadly, The mounting pressure proved overwhelming, and after much insistence from her family, she made the painful decision to place her baby into the Norfolk, Virginia adoption system. In that moment, Kathy signed the adoption papers without fully realizing the permanence of her choice. She would lose all rights to information regarding her daughter if Alexis's name was changed and she moved to another state. Kathy would have no way of knowing what had become of her. It would be as if she had never existed. Alexis would grow up, pursue an education, and eventually become a nurse, unaware of the sacrifices her mother had made. Alexis, now a nurse, navigated various relationships over the years, determined to move forward with her life. However, she made a conscious decision not to have any more children. Alexis would always be her only daughter. In 1991, she met Ida Cannon in a bar, and they quickly fell in love, eventually marrying and moving in together. During this time, Kathy shared with Ida that she had a teenage daughter named Alexis, who would have been around 17 years old at that point. She expressed her hope that Ida would reach out to Alexis, as she was eager to reconnect. As time passed, however, Alexis did not call. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. Then, in 2010, Kathy received a call from the adoption agency. Initially, she thought that Alexis was finally searching for her, yearning to reconnect. Unfortunately, the news she received shattered her hopes. The agency informed her that the police were seeking her DNA to determine if her daughter was a victim of a terrible crime. Kathy cooperated and provided her DNA, only to learn that the victim was not Alexis but a woman named Peggy Link Johnson. At this point, anyone might have chosen to move on, but not Kathy. She needed answers. She had to understand why the police had requested her DNA in the first place. They revealed that Alexis had disappeared some time ago, having run away from home, but could provide no further details. Desperate for information, Kathy turned to the internet. Until then, she had never used social media, but now she felt compelled to search for her daughter. She opened a Facebook account and began looking for Aundria Bowman, only to find that there was no profile under that name. Dennis and Brenda Bowman, her adoptive parents, also lacked any social media presence. Frustrated, she created a Facebook page titled Let's Find Aundria Bowman using the same image that had been distributed on search flyers. In the description, Kathy introduced herself as the biological mother of the missing girl, imploring anyone who might have information to contact her. Within hours, her inbox flooded with messages from dozens of people who were unaware that Aundria was in fact Alexis. Many residents were unaware that Aundria was missing, as there were no signs or announcements in town. They struggled to believe that she had run away, describing her as sincere, kind, friendly, and exceptionally warm. Among those who reached out to Kathy was Carl Koppelman, who offered to assist her in investigating the case free of charge. Together, they began exchanging information, working diligently on the investigation while the police reopened the case in light of these developments. The police assembled a new investigation team and returned to the Bowman household to inquire if they had any additional information in 2010. However, Brenda and Dennis Bowman had long since given up hope. They no longer distributed posters or actively searched for Aundria, resigning themselves to the belief that she would not return. This sentiment troubled the police, prompting them to ask the couple to recount their story once more, recalling their initial account from 1980. Brenda and Dennis's story began in the 1960s when they met as teenagers. Brenda, a quiet and sweet girl who didn't stand out academically or socially, fell for Dennis, who was older and serving in the Navy at the time. Some accounts suggest they were introduced by a mutual friend, quickly beginning to date. Brenda felt an instant connection, believing Dennis was her soulmate, destined to be by her side for life. Both were devout Christians, sharing a dream of a large family. They married in 1971 and spent the next 6 months stationed in another state before settling in Norfolk, Virginia, where they hoped to start a family. However, Brenda struggled to conceive. After consulting with doctors and undergoing tests, they discovered she had a double uterus, a condition that complicated her chances of pregnancy. According to a Netflix documentary, this condition often leads to difficulties, while various articles, including one from Mayo Clinic, indicate that women with a double uterus can have successful pregnancies, though they may also face increased risks of miscarriage or premature delivery. Faced with these challenges, the Bowmans decided to adopt. In 1975, they welcomed a little girl into their lives and soon moved to Hamilton, Michigan, a small community of approximately 3,000 inhabitants, where everyone knew each other, an important detail in the unfolding story. The town was deeply religious, with the church dictating the rhythms of daily life. Everyone attended church regularly, and the community was tightly knit. The Bowmans, devoted to their faith, became catechetical teachers. As Brenda grew, she was known as a sweet, respectful, and devout girl. However, everything changed when she turned 13. Miraculously, Brenda became pregnant and gave birth to a little girl named Vanessa. Aundria was thrilled to welcome her baby sister, excelling in her studies and maintaining a responsible demeanor, surrounded by good friends and a nurturing environment. Yet, overnight, her cheerful disposition soured when the Bowmans revealed that she was adopted, news that hit her hard. In response, Aundria began to rebel. She talked back, got into trouble, experimented with drugs, and associated with unsavory friends. She started running away from home for days at a time, and her life spiraled out of control. The lies escalated. These weren't trivial fabrications. She began telling everyone that her parents mistreated her, even claiming that her father abused her. Teachers were alerted and called the Bowmans in for a meeting. During discussions with her church, Aundria confessed to fabricating these stories. Concerned, her parents sought help, taking her to a psychologist, as it became clear that she was struggling with serious issues. Then, on March 11, 1989, Aundria made the decision to run away for good. Early that morning, Dennis took her to school for band practice and picked her up afterward. Once home, she went to her room to complete her homework. While Brenda prepared for work, the couple decided to drive together. Dennis would drop Brenda off and take Vanessa back home, allowing Aundria to focus on her studies. After dropping Brenda off, Dennis returned home with the baby, but was shocked to find Aundria missing. A travel bag was gone, along with some clothes and money from the church. Realizing that his daughter had run away, Dennis, filled with indignation, called the police to report not only her disappearance but also the theft. In the ensuing weeks, months, and even years, sightings of Aundria flooded in from every corner. People claimed to have seen her in different states. Whispers circulated that she might be pregnant or had dyed her hair, with rumors suggesting she was in a strip club in Indiana. In the end, the Bowmans decided to stop searching for Aundria, accepting that she had chosen to leave. She had married and built a life away from her family, and therefore they would no longer involve themselves. In 2010, they didn't understand why they were stirring up the past. For them, Aundria had left voluntarily, and there was nothing more to be done. However, when Kath and Carl heard this version, they couldn't believe it. They didn't understand why they had given up, why they had let the situation fade away. After all, Aundria was their daughter, a minor, still just a child. In 2010, dozens of people in the town didn't even know she was missing, which obviously didn't make sense. So, Kath and Carl continued to investigate. Thanks to their efforts, they received information that turned everything upside down. A woman named Meta McLeod contacted them to tell them that her case might be related to Aundria Michelle Bowman's. In 1989, Meta was only 6 years old. She was a happy, cheerful, carefree child, absolutely normal. At that time, she was living in Jolan with her family. One day in September, she asked her mother for permission to walk alone to a friend's house, which was very close, just a couple of streets away. When she left home, she grabbed her bike and headed to her friend's house. As she was passing by the Windmill gas station, a rusty red pickup truck pulled up next to her. The driver was a grown man, and after exchanging a few questions with her, he suddenly told the little girl that he was a friend of her parents and that they wanted him to take her with him to ensure nothing happened to her. The man claimed that her parents wanted him to accompany her to ensure her safety and that he would take her to see a puppy farm. He started the engine, and they drove off into the woods to set up a sort of camp. Just as they neared the location, he stopped the car and attacked her. I remember clearly that he tied her up, stripped her naked, and assaulted her. However, at one point they heard dogs barking and voices approaching. The man became nervous and fled the scene, leaving her handcuffed and exposed. Fortunately, this girl managed to escape and seek help, later reporting her ordeal. Following a prolonged search, authorities created flyers and a sketch of the perpetrator, but despite extensive efforts, they never found him. As an adult, Meta McLeod searched for him everywhere and investigated similar cases. She discovered that, in the same year, a teenager had disappeared without a trace. Her name was Aundria Michelle Bowman. But that wasn't all. In 2010, through social media, she found photos of Aundria's family and immediately noticed that Dennis Bowman, Aundria's adoptive father, looked exactly like the man who had kidnapped her. These revelations changed everything. Both Kathy and Carl delved deeper into the investigation and uncovered that the location of Meta's abduction was along the route Dennis took every day on his way home from work. Furthermore, the route to the camp where Meta was attacked matched the path to the area where Aundria had disappeared. The camp where the girl was attacked passed right by Dennis's house. Not only that, but the van Dennis owned was exactly the same as the one described by the victim. Everything began to align, prompting Kathy to investigate further. In the United States, there is a law known as the Freedom of Information Act, which grants citizens the right to access federal government information, including criminal histories of neighbors. Kathy took advantage of this to look up data on Dennis Bowman. What she found made her blood run cold. He had been involved in 2 cases related to attacks on women. The first incident occurred on May 23, 1980, in West Michigan, where he harassed a teenage girl riding her bicycle through a field. He attempted to kidnap and assault her at gunpoint, shooting her in the feet and demanding that she get into his truck. Fortunately, the teenager managed to escape and miraculously reported him to the police. Law enforcement swiftly tracked him down and arrested him, but he concocted numerous excuses, claiming he needed to pick up his daughter from school. Regardless, the police brought him to the station, and he was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison, ultimately being released in 1986. In 1998, he found himself in trouble again for breaking into a co-worker's house in Ottawa County, where he harassed her and stole her daughter's underwear. For this crime, he received a 1-year jail sentence. Even during his sentencing, he sent a letter to the judge stating, "I am the father of 2 lovely daughters, one 25 years old and the other 11 years old." This letter seemed to be an attempt to elicit sympathy from the judge, suggesting that he was a caring father. However, both judges in these cases deemed him a good man, which raises unsettling questions about the justice system's ability to see through his manipulative tactics. The judge in the previous case also recognized that Dennis posed a danger to women, explicitly recommending that he should not date. Despite this warning, Brenda welcomed him back into her home and forgave him for his actions in 1980, as well as for what he did in 1998. After learning this, Kathy dug deeper into the story and discovered that Aundria had told several people on various occasions that Dennis had been abusing her. This information came directly from Aundria's friends, women who had known her during her teenage years. Their accounts were completely opposite to that of the Bowman family. They stated that Aundria did not use drugs, did not associate with a bad crowd, and when she ran away from home, it was to hide in a closet, not to escape her life. According to them, she claimed her parents treated her poorly, with her father in particular being abusive. On one occasion, when Aundria confided in a teacher, instead of alerting the police or social services, the principal called her parents and confronted them. Aundria was asked to repeat everything she had told the principal in front of her parents, the very people she accused. At that moment, she felt compelled to retract her statement. The same scenario unfolded with the parish priest, who also confronted her parents, leading Aundria to declare that she had lied. Listening to these accounts, Kathy was convinced that Aundria's last disappearance was not genuine and that Dennis Bowman must have done something to her. Additionally, she discovered that 5 months after Aundria had gone missing, the Bowmans moved out of their home and relocated just 4 houses away. This was highly suspicious. Typically, if your daughter has run away, you would wait for her to return rather than move. You wouldn't relocate if you expected her to come back, unless you already knew she wouldn't. Kathy became obsessed with the family's move, focusing intently on both their old and new houses. She spent countless hours observing them from Google Maps, noting changes in their new garden over time, especially in one particular area. This area made her suspect that it might contain the remains of her daughter. Kathy was convinced that the remains of her daughter were buried there. The changes in the area were too significant to ignore. Armed with this information, she approached the police, pleading with them to search the house, specifically that spot, to dig up the earth and complete the investigation. However, the police informed her that there was not enough evidence to warrant a search based solely on her suspicions, and they indicated that the case would stall yet again. Determined, Kathy decided that if the police wouldn't take action, she would. Near the house, she placed a striking billboard featuring Aundria's wanted flyer, ensuring that the Bowmans would see her face every day and remember what they had done. Kathy distributed posters everywhere, handed out flyers, spoke to neighbors, and engaged with relatives of the Bowmans, relentlessly pursuing anyone who might help her uncover the truth. Every night she called the Bowman family, threatening them with her knowledge of Dennis's actions, so much so that they ultimately disconnected their phone. As time passed, Brenda, Dennis's wife, grew increasingly frustrated and went to the police station, threatening to report Kathy for harassment. Months rolled on until November 2019, when Dennis Bowman was arrested for the unsolved murder of 25-year-old Kathleen Doyle, which had occurred on September 11, 1980, in Norfolk, Virginia. The details of the case were harrowing. That night, Kathleen was home alone. Her husband was away on business. so she invited a friend over for wine and gossip. After enjoying some drinks, the friend left, leaving Kathleen alone for the remainder of the night. The next morning, concerned when Kathleen didn't answer her phone, her friend returned to her house, accompanied by her husband. When they knocked on the door and received no response, they entered the main room, only to discover Kathleen lifeless and lying in a pool of blood. According to the investigation, Kathleen had been beaten, stabbed, and strangled. Male DNA was discovered all over her body, on the sheets, and even on a cigar found at the scene. But that's not all. The cigar was found in the kitchen garbage. Given the burn mark on Kathleen's cheek, it was evident that her assailant had used it to inflict pain. In 2019, the evidence was re-examined, and the DNA from the cigar matched Dennis Bowman's completely. Both Dennis and Brenda claimed it was impossible for him to have committed the crime. At that time, he was involved in a trial, insisting he could not have been in Virginia. However, it turned out that for 2 weeks, Dennis could not attend his trial because he was required to participate in a 2-week drill as a member of the U.S. Navy Reserve. This meant that he was indeed in the area when Kathleen Doyle was murdered. When questioned, Dennis initially denied the allegations but eventually broke down and provided a version of events. He claimed he had been very drunk that night and was looking for money. In his disoriented state, he wandered through the house, searching the kitchen and dining room, until he found Kathleen. He described a struggle, stating that he unintentionally stabbed her before fleeing the scene. However, what the police discovered painted a far grimmer picture than Dennis's account. When pressed for more details, he claimed to have gaps in his memory, attributing his violent behavior to an inner demon that compelled him to commit crimes. Taking advantage of this confession, the police decided to strike a deal with him, hoping to extract more information regarding Aundria's case. Dennis repeatedly insisted that Aundria had run away and that he knew nothing about her. However, with the strategic use of Brenda's influence, they managed to get him to alter his narrative. Since the murder of Kathleen Doyle occurred in Virginia, authorities planned to transfer Dennis to a prison there, which complicated matters for him. His entire family, including his wife and daughter Vanessa, lived in Michigan, making frequent travel to Virginia nearly impossible. Under pressure, Dennis's first revised version of events suggested that when Aundria escaped, she hadn't actually made it far. He claimed that when he returned home, he found her packing to leave and learned that she intended to go to the police to report him for sexual assault. She intended to go to the police station and report him for sexual assault. At the top of the stairs, Dennis, filled with indignation, struck her, causing the teenager to tumble down the stairs. As she fell, Dennis panicked, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. What was clear to him was that he did not want to go back to jail. 2 days later, in a fit of desperation, he cut the body in half, placed it in a box, and left it at the neighbor's doorstep for the garbage truck to collect. And indeed, that's what happened. Brenda, his wife, was adamant about wanting to know the truth. She demanded to understand what had transpired. It was then that Dennis claimed that Aundria had actually taken her own life. He reiterated that he had pushed her, that she had fallen, and subsequently died as a result. He insisted that he had hidden her well, burying her close to a cemetery. Dennis claimed he wrapped her in a sheet and even sprinkled cinnamon over her remains, attempting to embellish his story. However, the police remained skeptical, and Brenda was even less convinced. After numerous changes to his story, in February 2020, Dennis finally confessed that Aundria was buried in the garden of their new home. This time he spoke the truth. The area that had been changing on Google Maps was indeed the site of the girl's grave. He had dismembered her and concealed her remains in the garden, alongside various pieces of garbage, dirty diapers, a chocolate wrapper treating Aundria as if she were mere refuse, as if she meant nothing to him. On May 15, 2020, Dennis Bowman was formally charged with the murder of Aundria Michelle Bowman. For the murder of Kathleen Doyle, he was sentenced to 2 life sentences, and for Aundria's case, he received a sentence of 35 to 50 years in prison. However, according to police, they believe Dennis may have committed additional crimes of which they are unaware. Now it's your turn. What do you think about this case? Do you believe this man will eventually confess to more crimes? Well, that's all for today's video. If you found it interesting, please leave me a like and a comment below. Your support would really help the channel. One particularly shocking aspect of this case, in my opinion, was Brenda Bowman's reaction upon discovering how her daughter was killed and dismembered. Yet, despite the horror of it all, she chose to cremate the remains, dividing them and keeping a part for herself while discarding the rest. She kept one part of her daughter and gave the other to Kathy. Kathy has publicly stated that she finds this gesture macabre and disrespectful. While she is grateful to have a part of her daughter, it feels as though her daughter has been dismembered all over again, as if Brenda Bowman were repeating what Dennis did. So, the question of the day is, do you think Brenda's gesture is beautiful or macabre? The secret word is disappearance. Leave it in the comments. As soon as I see it, I'll give it a like. See you in the next video. Bye.